Hi, everybody. So we're just waiting for the live video to really get going. And they always have a little bit of a few minutes at the beginning where they're telling people to join. And of course, I always just want to say thank you so much for joining. And I'm still sort of like in awe of last week when a lot of other people, you might have seen that we had a special guest who just kind of showed up. And we don't have a guest today specifically, but then as I said before, you just kind of never know who might show up. But having said that, what I'd really like to do is to invite you to offer feedback, to make your comments, ask questions, and if any of you do want to join for a few minutes, today's topic is going to be on hope. So if you want to share something, if you want to be, share, like if you want to tell your little bit of a story about hope or not having hope, then I would like to say, please join in and just push the little button and let me know that you have something you want to say. Because as I said, there isn't a specific guest coming on today. I was afraid to ask my friends again, even though they're so amazing and talented. I just didn't want to, put it on them. So anyway, I think about these topics kind of ahead of time, and then I do kind of process them and think about them for a while. This time I actually made some notes, just so that I could follow a thread that I'd been kind of thinking about what hope means and how that looks, and not only personally, but like from a professional perspective and how that kind of plays out, because it's quite illuminating. I have my tea, I hope you don't mind. And so let's look at the definition. So I wrote the definition down of hope, because I know I had a colleague the other day go, I don't like that word. It bothers me. I don't want to use it. And I had to sort of really think about that. So hope is a feeling of expectation or desire for a particular thing to happen, or it's a feeling of trust. The two are probably intermingled. What's interesting about the definition of that, I think, is that a lot of that's kind of hidden underneath the surface. And I'll give you some explanations and some, some understanding of what that really means, why they're hidden. And I think we all experience the fact that they're not really hidden. And it's part of uncovering some of those hidden hopes. Expectation kind of has a bad rap, that word. I had a girlfriend who said the other day, she goes, well, manage your expectations. And it's like, yeah, okay, I got to manage my expectations. It's better not to have an expectation. But it is interesting because I think the feeling of hope that we all have, it can be sort of a hidden agenda. And when it creeps up, it's like, okay, we end up feeling the opposite of that, which we are going to talk about. Now, I think the quote here that I had posted this morning, that Noam Chomsky said, and he's an interesting philosopher. And optimism is a strategy for making a better future. Here, I've got it on myself here. Because unless you believe that the future can be better, you are unlikely to step up and take responsibility for making it so. So again, there's a certain, over the last conversations we've had, a lot of the time responsibility kind of shows up, but what does that really mean? And I will explain that, because it's not responsibility kind of in the same way that you think of it. It's kind of got an underneath lying part, which is kind of cool. So if you assume there is no hope, you guarantee there will be no hope. And that goes to that same old story where, where you put your attention is what you're going to get. So, which I think is kind of true. Hello, Frankie Watt. It's nice to see you. And as we're discussing hope, and Frankie and I had a conversation about hope the other day, and we were chuckling about how, last week's had gone and the fun that we had with that, and somebody different showing up. And so, like, I do want to reiterate, anybody who wants to show up and say something or share their thoughts or idea, please join. I am here by myself today, and so, or write what you want if you don't want to come live. I know some people feel a little intimidated by that. But this is just meant to be a community conversation about things and to help people. So as we're talking about hope, it is interesting because back when I was in school, I remember my professor saying to me the Helen Keller quote, which really, really still sticks with me. And I'll explain why. It's nothing in the world is done without hope. And I really had to really sort of really process and rumble with that one for a while, because I wasn't really sure, because this was such a long time ago, what that really meant. What is it that, the idea that nothing in this world is done with hopes. I'm going to give without hopes. I'm going to give you an example. So just simple ones. Like every day, I live in hope that I'm going to actually feed myself something that's going to taste good. That can be a disappointed hope sometimes. But I live every day with that hope that I'm actually going to manage to do that. But it's not one of my skill sets. But, so my professor said, and this was like really messed with my head. He goes, yeah, but even murderers have a hope. And I'm going, what? But in the simple way, there's nothing we do kind of on any given day, really, that doesn't kind of have a hope behind it. Well, we might not be aware of that hope or what, but it is a hidden hope. Hi, everybody joining up. It's so nice to see you. And we might not be aware of it, but we certainly start to feel it when we don't get it or have it. And so that's what we're going to kind of discuss a little bit more today. So, and I'll tell you why. But I also want to really clear up, I'm not like a Pollyanna. I am not this kind of Pollyanna person who, only believes that the only way to do anything is to be positive all the time. Are you kidding? I'm a huge proponent of own your feelings. When you start to feel resentful, when you feel upset, when you feel sad, when you feel hopeless, disempowered, all of those things, those are all part of who we are as human. And I'm not saying that we're ever going to go through our whole life not feeling some of those things. But the brilliance of all those feelings is that those are disappointed hopes. And if we can highlight those, then we can start to figure them out and do something about them. And that's what Noam Chomsky was saying, was about the part about taking up and taking responsibility for them, understanding them. So that's kind of what we're going to go over a little bit today. And I hope that it'll help you, because it helps everybody to look at things on through a different lens. And I hope that I can do that today. That's my hope. And whether I do or I not, it is another thing. I would be a disillusioned optimist if I wasn't able to do that. And that's my line for what I call cynics. Now, I'm not sure if being cynical is actually the opposite of being hopeful, but there is something about a disillusioned optimist. And that's kind of where those feelings come from, of disappointment, hopelessness, feeling disempowered, and all of those sad or resentful. And all we have to do is look at relationships all over the world at the moment and see where really the world is struggling with a lot of all of that stuff. So underneath our hopes are really probably our needs, our values, our principles, and those are things that we stand on. So when we don't get those for ourselves, then we can feel a little bit hopeless. But it's not permanent and forever. And that's always really something that's good to remember. But I do really want to stress, I'm not like the Pollyanna type, as my friends would know. But the thing about that is that's when somebody comes to counseling, or they want coaching, or you phoned your best friend who's your personal growth buddy or something like that. I know that my friends and I, we talk back and forth about all this stuff. It's how we process it. And that's how we learn and grow, is from each other. And that's the beautiful gift of being human and finding your people and being part of a tribe and a community. And we all have those in different ways. And so, anyway, so when people do come to counseling, those are the feelings that people struggle with, because we're not really necessarily comfortable with them. We do sort of start out with being happy little people. And then as life happens to us, as it does for all of us in different ways, we can become disillusioned or, feeling hopeless, or the things that made us, that we were innately happy about didn't happen, or, and this leads into so many different, topics. But anyway, and I don't want to lose my thread. But I feel that it's really important, and I know I keep repeating probably the same thing with every conversation we have, but it's about, if we take those feelings as our barometer, if we look at them and go, oh, wow, there's a gift in there. It's meant to tell me something. So if you're feeling hopeless or disempowered, or you're feeling anxious, or you're really not sure what's going on, but you're having what people term as negative feelings, I go, no, those aren't negative feelings. Those are like your barometer. Those are the things that are saying to you, pay attention. There's something that needs to happen here. So I'm not saying just go out and be hopeful. I'm saying it's really helpful to process what those feelings are all about. So for example, I know when I was really young, I got married when I was really young, and then I had all these boys. And I remember saying to my husband at one point, I sort of feel like I have a different rule book than you about marriage or something, or relationships. It was that we come as young people in our teens and our 20s, we sort of come into the world with all these hidden hopes and dreams. Those are our hidden hopes and dreams. And then somebody lets us down, or they don't do it the same way as us, or, we feel criticized, or whatever happens. Then, or people don't live up to that expectation. That's that expectation again. It's the hidden agenda, but it's a hope. And so I kind of call it the hope behind the dream, the hope behind the complaint of what it is. So let's just say, for instance, my husband used to not see things. I mean, a lot of partners don't. They don't see things in the same way. They were raised differently. It's not a criticism. But when you're 20, I sort of didn't get that piece. And but when I learned, and I went to coaching and I went to counseling, I realized that complaint was quite deep for me, that he didn't see things or do things in the same way. He didn't step up and, pick up the groceries that were, not the groceries, but the garbage that were sitting there and take it out. Couldn't he see that I had the 4 boys and I was trying to do this and I was juggling and, I didn't have that. Well, it's interesting because that went quite deep for me. I grew up in a household where I really did a lot. I was an overfunctioner. My mom was a single mom, and I had my brother, and I overfunctioned. So when I got married, I had this hidden idea. Wasn't even aware of it, but it's a hidden idea, that it was a hidden hope or a hidden dream that my husband would be an equal, and he would work as hard as I did, and he would do, he could see where I was, I needed help. Oh, well, we all know that doesn't work. So, in retrospect, I can laugh about it now, my poor ex-husband, but as we all learn as we go. But the truth is that we all kind of have these hidden hopes. And then when we're disappointed in those hidden hopes and we don't get them, or people don't live up to that like we kind of thought they would, that's where we can feel a little bit hopeless, when they pile on top of each other. Hence, we have so much struggles with relationships, disappointed hopes. We have difficulties nationally with disappointed hopes. People aren't asking the right questions. What is it that you need? People aren't able to express what they really need. And so they have disappointed hopes. And this is why hope, I think, is such an important thing and to have. Because once you've solved all of this other stuff, that's the hidden hopes and the disappointments and disillusionment, then we can, as Noam Chomsky says, take responsibility for that. So for me, going to school, and I really did become a specialist in communication. Now, my sons won't agree with that for lots of reasons, but it's because I'm their mom. But communication is so important. And so what I think that Mr. Chomsky's trying to say is this piece, is that if we can really understand the disappointed hope behind all of that, then what happens is we can then learn how to communicate it to others. So generally, the disappointed hope is something we believe in, something we have a desire for, something that is important to us that we need. We need support. And of course, we all know, unlike I did when I was 20, that nobody else, whether it's a group of people, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it's with your kids, your partner, your best friends, nobody can really know what's going on in your head or in your heart and until you're the one who has to take responsibility for that and process that. So that's the tricky bit. People come to counseling and they go, I'm not feeling happy and I'm not feeling this and I'm disappointed and I feel really hopeless. And I'm not talking about clinical depression. I'm talking about just those hard feelings that we can get really stuck in. Resentment and, he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that, or she doesn't do this or she doesn't do that. And it's like, wait a minute. There's a whole dream and a hope behind that that's actually important to the person who's expressing that. So what I'm hoping we can do today, and hello everybody, I really do hope that some of you will ask me some questions, because that's kind of what the community is meant to be about. It's meant to be about sharing of ideas. If you've got something you want to share about hope or not having hope, this has been a tough year for everybody on so many different levels, with so many different feelings. And it could be easy to feel disempowered. It could be so easy to feel a little bit hopeless and kind of stuck and all of that stuff. I mean, I felt a little bit like that myself yesterday and had to kind of reframe what was going on and accept that I was missing my boys and families and all of those sorts of things. And we can't always be feeling hopeful all the time. And that's really an important part, I think, of talking about hope and how it impacts all of us. And of course, again, it's kind of about what it is that we're thinking. So that goes into an even deeper sort of counseling perspective or coaching perspective or any process, really, it doesn't matter what it is trying to go, well, wait a minute. What is the story I'm telling myself about this particular item? And I think as human beings when we're younger, maybe it's, as we mature, we learn not to make it other people's fault or to blame other people. But I do know when you're younger, and even people my age, or, and I'm a grandma, so can still do the same thing and be sort of stuck in that same loop where it's somebody else's fault because they're doing this. And usually what's going on is that they're just doing something. It's kind of an inert thing. It's their thing. But it's a story about what it means. And so if we think, again, if we're going to take it personally in any way, shape, or form, then that's going to make us, have a thought that says, oh, that's personal. They're doing it on purpose. It's, something like that. And then that's when we can really fall into despair and hopelessness. And of course, that's not really a very nice place to be. So, and it is hard to get yourself out of it, but it is about the process of finding out at a deeper level what that means. So like the story I was telling you about when I was really young, it's like, that was really an upsetting, stupid thing over the garbage, but it was really meaningful to me that my husband would see that I needed help, because that was something I didn't get when I was younger. So how would he possibly know the deeper meaning of that silly little story about why in God's name can't you pick up the garbage and take it out? I mean, I'm pretty sure most of you know what, have experienced something like that. So he couldn't know that unless I actually communicated it. So because I don't have another guest, I'd love some of you all to say something or to join if you want to, because it's such a nice topic. Hope is really a nice topic, and it can really be devastating when we don't feel that sense of hopefulness about things. And again, it's a little bit of a reframe. But I don't know if this is going to work for you or not, because, I mean, I sort of hate to keep going on. But I'm wondering if you're interested in kind of what that process looks like, kind of like I just explained it a little bit. But then again, how do you communicate that? Because we can all get really, can really get triggered by silly things. They seem deeply difficult, but if you think about it, is the garbage really something to get difficult about, or to get upset about? Well, at the time, I didn't understand that it was about something way deeper, way more meaningful to me than it was about support. It was about if he did that for me, he would love me. Well, that's not true, unless I actually tell him that that's my love language, which is, kind of an important thing. Acts of service is one of, the main love languages of things that if he did that and I saw he'd done that, it's like coming in and finding your husband's cleaned the house or done the dishes or any of that. It's kind of like, ooh, I loved you. I loved you. I know that we have these shared responsibilities, and, but don't forget, this was 45 years ago. So I had the major role of taking care of the house and the boys, and he went out to work. And I work part-time, but it was kind of the usual thing. So those were always like huge gifts to me. However, if you don't know that that's what's going on, I could feel a little bit discouraged, if those sorts of things that were my hidden hopes, my hidden dreams of what my marriage would look like or what my relationships would look like. So, and I learned that about the hidden hope, the hidden dream, way back, like years ago, when I first started counseling, when I first started to learn about coaching. And I thought, that's a brilliant thing. So you can actually use that with anything. That's like the hope behind the criticism. What was that hope behind the criticism? What's the hope behind that upset? And so when you kind of start to look through that lens of what was that dream behind that? Oh my God, it can really change a lot of conversations, interactions, and all of that. Like when I got that one point, whenever my partner would get upset or my kids would get upset, you'd be able to go, okay, wait a minute. What was that hope behind that? What was the dream behind that? What was the, sort of like that hidden need? So I definitely work with needs and values and principles, because I feel that those are all the things that are deeply important to us, as well as being an attachment therapist. So these things are the little difficult things that stop people from feeling really connected and really safely attached in some way to the people that they care about, if we let those things undermine them. So, it sounds really simple in a little conversation where we've been talking for half an hour, but it's quite a complex and meaningful process that really can be a game changer when it comes to relationships. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is helping people manage the conflicts, manage those hidden hopes and dreams, ask for what you need and want. And so even though like this is supposed to be a light and hopefully hopeful conversation, the truth is that to get past some of all that stuff that's stopping those feelings of hopefulness, happiness, like I said last week, if you have to ask what hopefulness feels like, or if you have to know what happiness is, or what was it that Louis Armstrong said? If you have to ask what jazz is, you probably aren't experiencing it. And that's the thing when a lot of people get to as well. Well, I don't just love this person anymore. Well, you loved them for a reason in the beginning. And all of these difficult things, the things that undermine it, stop that feeling. It kind of just is a roadblock. It's the roadblock. And that's why this can be such a game changer. I know the conversation is about hope, but it really is, hopefulness is really about our hopes and our dreams and our values and what we need. So even with, you're probably going, well, how does that fit in with needs? Well, it does, because we all have needs that are different than other people's. So in that instance I was talking about with my husband, it was that I really had a hidden need for support in a way that I didn't even know that I needed it. So that's where it's brilliant to start to think about, okay, wait a minute, if I'm feeling hopeless or I'm feeling discouraged and all sort of those feelings of resentment or sadness or even anxiety comes into play with a lot of all that kind of stuff. So because anxiety can kind of be the manifestation, if you know what I mean, of all those other things. So I don't know, is anybody interested in kind of learning about, this sort of simple idea I have of how once you've kind of really been an archaeologist of your own feelings, and you've kind of really figured out the hidden meaning or the hidden hope behind these things, then the important part is we need to take responsibility, because if you don't tell other people, that's kind of not fair, is what I've learned. It is not fair on them that they don't know, or that you've got this hidden hope, this hidden need, hidden desire, whatever you want to call it, that they had no idea that you needed or wanted it. So I start a conversation. I don't know if you're interested, but I'm going to go with it. I try to start a conversation. I really hope this helps, because this is kind of the mainstay of communication. And I really do feel that we can change our lives. We can change our communities and the world and how it all works, one conversation at a time. And that starts at home. So, and I mean that quite authentically. If you learn how to talk in these ways and learn to mine for the gold in those difficult feelings, then we can teach those to our children. We can, and in my case, my grandchildren. And I see my boys doing a wonderful job of doing that with their children. And that's where emotional intelligence comes in. So hope is kind of the same thing. It's part of that whole package that that will make you feel different when you've figured out how to, mine for the gold, as I say. Anyway, so an excuse if you can hear babies up there. There's babies up there crying. They're not getting their needs met. They have hidden hopes too, that they were going to get fed or something like that. You kind of know what I mean. But anyway, so, but it's just there's kids up there. So this is how it works. This is what I think is really important. So I learned 20 years ago all about nonviolent communication. And then I went and I studied with Dr. Sue Johnson, and I did attachment theory. And so I kind of expanded a little bit on the nonviolent communication model, because I actually think, this is the best part about hope, that you can't really start any conversation, whether it's with somebody at the store, or whether, because haven't seen somebody in a long time. If you've got something you need to say to somebody, whoever it is, your best friend, your partner, your kids, and it's about something you need them to know. Something has happened that has caused you to feel less hopeful, or less happy, or all of those things, resentful, pissed off, sad, all of those things, hurt. We all have those. And hurts generally are, again, a hidden hope that's been hurt. And that's where the disillusioned optimism comes in. So it's intention. And then go, well, what do you mean? So you can't really start a conversation with somebody if it's going to be deeply meaningful, unless you tell them what your hope is to get out of that conversation. So again, I'm using the word hope, but it is. We all go into those conversations and we don't want them to be arguments, and yet usually we argue or we take it personally, and we don't express it really well. If we've done the processing of that whole thing, you've done it with a coach or a counselor or your best friend, you're really clear. Be clear about what you want out of the conversation. Are you hoping for more love? You both want to feel more connected. You want somebody at work to have more respect for you, or you both want to feel more respectful or more collaborative, or whatever it is that your hope is that's going to come out of that conversation. There's something really empowering for us that we're really clear. We've got clarity about what's going on. We understand how things have impacted us. And now we're feeling hopeful that if we express it to this person, we're hoping that we're going to get some of what we want back, or what we desire, what it is that's important to us. That's how we take responsibility for the conversation. So I'm just saying hi to people that are joining. If you see me waving, it's because I'm going, oh, hi, thank you for joining. So that's the start. Now, the thing about presenting that is any conversation that is about what you think and how you feel, what you need, what you want, all of that, where you've been hurt, where there's conflict, differences. This is how you manage differences, is you take responsibility, as Mr. Chomsky said, and you go, okay, What do I hope to get out of this conversation? And if you're really clear on that, I wouldn't even have the conversation unless I was really clear on what my hope was for the conversation and what it was I needed to express, or where I'd had a disappointed hope with this person, whether it was personal, professional, or if it's a group of people or whatever. Like, I think that this is something you can use every day. So then the next step, because there's 5 steps, the next step is what happened. And it's and you know, I'm sure all of you have heard, you can't say you did this and you did that, and it sounds really critical. I had to teach my dad this because he always sounded really critical. But it's, so to not sound critical, not to sound like you're blaming the other person, because I mean, who wants to make someone else wrong? Okay, so we really want to avoid that, because if we're making ourselves right, then we're making the other person wrong, and no one wants to be wrong. Then that's when you're going to get all the negative stuff coming back. So if you just say, you've said your hope, your intention, what you want to get out of the conversation, and you've softened it so that it, you know, it sounds collaborative. You want it to be collaborative. Then the second part is what happened. So if we want to go back to my 20-year-old dysfunctional self, a week ago, I could have said to my husband, when you left the garbage by the door as you walked by it for the 10th time. No, probably wouldn't have said that bit about the 10th time. That's it. It's simple. It's just what happened. I wasn't saying he'd done anything wrong. I wasn't right. I wasn't doing the moral high ground or, you know, any of that kind of stuff. It's just when you walk by the garbage. That's it. When you said this, and just a statement of fact. It's always just a statement of fact. So that's 2. So we've done 2 stages. So then the third one is how you felt. And it's really simple. I felt, it's like so simple. And I always say the truth is simple. But it takes work before you get to the simple part, is what this really conversation was about in terms of hopes. So the third part is simple. It's I felt. And angry, I just want to kind of remind you guys, angry is a secondary emotion. It's the underside of that. We think we feel angry, and this is when we're staying up on the surface, but really our emotions underneath that are the ones that you want to express. I felt hurt. I felt sad. I actually ended up feeling hopeless. I felt unsupported. Whatever it is that the feeling is. And even unsupported isn't really a feeling, because even under unsupported is probably hurt or sadness or something like that. So it's really important that if you don't recognize that feeling, that's the part you got to wait and figure it out. And you can usually recognize the feeling if you sit with it for a little while. And that's why journaling and all of these other things, hi Joe, other things can come into play if you don't know. You can also do lots of creative stuff and physical stuff until you figure out what the feelings are. So that's the third step. The fourth step, which I find takes a little bit more work, is what it was you needed. Now, I'm not talking about neediness. I'm talking about what it was you needed. So in this instance, with my silly story, it's only really kind of just to explain it, is that I needed support. And I needed sort of, it was support. And it was something I needed, was support. But mine was an emotional support, something to be visible. I wanted him to know me and acknowledge that with doing that action, that he could see that I had a lot on and it was really hard, and he was going to love and support me to do that. So I can't actually remember, this instance. I just kind of remember the learning in all of it. I mean, I just know that we had lots of conversations like this. But so it goes even further than just your need. It can just be a need or a value or a principle. But you see, if it's about a need, I needed to feel supported, because I actually had a value for us to understand each other, to know each other enough to be able to do that. Now, that was the unfortunate part, like I told you earlier, was that I assumed that he could do that without me telling him. Never going to happen. So then when you have that conversation, you can tell that person that, it can be about your needs, your values, or the principles, things that have been compromised. What needs, what values, and what principles of yours that are important to you, the core of you, have been compromised by this action. Now, I know the garbage is kind of a silly thing to feel that about, but it's just as an example, so you kind of get what the process is like. So when you figured those things out, so you have to figure out your feelings, you have to figure out your needs, your values, and your principles. When you've been able to express that, there's no argument. And the beauty about this is that your feelings are never right and wrong. Somebody can't argue with your feelings. They just are feelings. But it's our responsibility, exactly like what was expressed in Mr. Chomsky, and I'm going to keep bringing it up, is that we're the ones who have to be responsible for that and to the expression of that. So that so once we understand all that about ourselves, then we can have the conversation. Otherwise, I tell my clients, you don't want to have the conversation until you really get this part, because it's not an argument. It won't create more conflict. It might create more conversation, but it's going to be a more positive conversation because you're taking responsibility for your needs. You're not blaming the other person for it not happening. Now, the last part is a little bit trickier. And you also want to ask your partner for some reflective listening, I think, at this point. Do they understand what you're trying to say? Can they hear it? Do they get it? Is it, are they hearing it through in the same way that you're trying to express it? I think that's the important part. So it's up to us to say, do you understand what I mean? And then they can come back with what they think you're saying, and then you can, if it needs tweaking, you can tweak it. But the last part, I don't want to bore you, but the last part really is, what's the request that you need going forward with that? So if you do those 5 steps, and then you get to the request, the ask, whatever you want to say, the ask, usually I like to use the words willing and able, because they sort of imply, gives the other person autonomy to say no, or yes, or maybe, or can I think about it? And those are the answers you're going to get. You're not going to get, you could get all of that, and then you have to deal with that as well. So the request in this, story, the silly story, is, I think I remember saying, are you able and willing to notice when I need help with those things that you're walking by, or that they obviously need to go to the garbage, or whatever the story is. And then this is, and you're either going to get it, well, no, I can't. I just don't notice it. Or, well, then what can we do about that? Then you can brainstorm and be collaborative and talk about it. Or you'll get a yes, I can absolutely do that. No problem. Didn't know that. And you can kiss and make up, as it were. You can get, I really need to think about that. I'm a little bit worried about whether I can do that, or whatever the answer is. So, but then you have to be able to be willing to work with whatever the answer is that comes. So for me, those are kind of the principles and the basics of how to have a conversation when you've kind of lost hope, or you've had a hidden hope that got hurt, a hidden hurt that, from your hope, and how to express it. And I really do think that that's the valuable part is, once you've figured it all out, and that's what's your responsibility, my responsibility. I mean, I'd still go through this process. And then how to express it to people so that they really get it and understand what it is that you're needing and, wanting, and all of that kind of stuff. So anyway, I have now talked for 40 minutes. You must be so tired of hearing my voice. But I do think that, feeling hopeful about relationships, about yourself, about the world, about what's going on is really important. So being able to express how you feel. My son came down last night, and I was really having a difficult moment. My oldest son, because we bought a house together, and he took the dog out for me, and I just was feeling a little hopeless, with the new rules and even stronger rules, and don't do this and don't do that, and we think we're really doing our best over here. I just said, I just really need a hug. I just really need to see another human being. Like I'm by myself. And he was, oh, Mom, that's really good. So we had a hug, and I just felt so much better because as I said yesterday, or the day before, I'd actually been dreaming about hugging. So I thought I must really be needing. I have a disappointed hope for hugging in my life. So I went for the hug, and I thought that was really nice that he went with that too. He's a good son. So I think. I don't think that depression is the opposite of hope. I think that feeling hopeless is different than depressed. So we're not really talking about depression here. We're talking about what it is that we can do to be optimistic and strategize for a better future for ourselves, better relationship for ourselves, better work environment for ourselves, all of that kind of stuff. And I know we can do that. It's all about what we think, and it boils down to that one thing is, what is it we know about ourselves that we need and want that we're not getting in that disappointed hope? So I really appreciate all of you being here. Does anybody have anything they want to ask, or share? Because I would love to hear something about your hope or how it impacts you. Thank you for the hugs, Frankie. Right back at you, girl. See, we all need hugs. So even virtual hugs make me feel hopeful that one day we are going to have hugs again. This is such a bugger for huggers. Anyway, so that's my favorite new expression. So if nobody has anything to say or share, then, and please, if you didn't want to do it in a public forum like this, where people can see who you are, please feel free to contact me, direct message me, send me an email or send me a text. If my phone number's on the thing, if you want to talk about anything. And that's why people, want to have a coach. They need their best friends. They need their community and their tribe. And we all need that. So if you're feeling less than hopeful or discouraged or resentful, or you've got negative feelings, don't be alone with those, or be alone with them if that's what you prefer. But really process those, live with them, be with them. Those are the barometers, like I said. Those are what make me feel hopeful and tell me that I need to look after something for myself. It's like, go, oh, Mheyah, hey, girl, you're missing something. You haven't looked after this, or you haven't, noticed this about yourself. So I think that a lot of us want to run away from those hard feelings that we have sometimes, or we leave relationships instead of sticking with them, or all sorts of stuff. And or we leave jobs. At the end of the day, if we don't get what we need and we lose hope of getting those needs met, we're going to leave. We're going to, we're not going to stay where we are, because we're going to hope. It'll give us renewed hope of something different next time. And I think that that's a really important piece. So we can renew hope, I think, without having to go to huge extremes all the time. Of course, there's circumstances where we have to leave and it's abusive, or there's all sorts of negative things that we really shouldn't be living with. It's not good for us. However, I think we do have a tendency to blame the circumstance for not feeling hopeful and not getting our needs met, where we have the ability, we have the power, we are empowered, and we can change it if we know how. And I just want to leave you with that, and I hope that will make you feel more hopeful a little bit, is recognizing that what your needs are not getting met, then it means you can step up and change it without having to, go to hugely life-altering choices, like leaving a relationship, or that really generally is working, except for this piece around not getting your needs met. And that's where we need to step up and tell people what those are. Anyway, so bless you all. You've stuck with me for 45 minutes. Okay, I promise next week we're going to have a guest. And I've already had an offer of guests. It's just nobody was available today. So I think next week's is going to be a really good conversation with one of my British friends. She's going to come and talk, and it's going to be really great. So I'm really enjoying this. I'm not so happy that you had to listen to only me for 45 minutes, but that's okay. I'm going to live in hope for the week that next week will be different. Anyway, so I really, really want to send you out and say, find that feeling of hope. You can change it if you need to. And I know this myself personally. So bless you all. I love you all. It's really nice to see you all here. Thank you to my friends who are joining and all the new people that are here. It really is great. I'd love to meet you more. So if you have anything you'd like to send me, or you have some ideas of a conversation that you'd really think you'd love to hear about, not that I would have the answers, but we could certainly figure out how to talk about it. And that's kind of fun because that's how we all learn, including me. So don't be shy. Step up. Send me a message, something that you'd like to hear about. And I promise next week we'll have a guest, maybe some surprise guests, who knows. Anyway, thank you all. And I love you all. Talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks for being here.